Chosen one, stop everything you are doing right now. I don't care where you are, what position your body is in, or how busy your life feels at this exact moment. What is coming through right now is not meant to be background noise. This is not something you listen to while scrolling, while walking, while half present. This is a direct interruption, a divine pause. You are being asked to give your full attention because what is about to be revealed to you is weighty, deliberate, and irreversible. Something you did, something so small that you never labeled it as important, triggered a reaction in the spiritual realm that was not expected, not prepared for, not even calculated. This was not a grand sacrifice. It was not a public declaration. It was not a moment anyone applauded or even noticed. In fact, if someone asked you to point it out, you might struggle to remember it clearly, but heaven remembers. And when I say heaven, I am not speaking metaphorically. I am referring to beings who have existed long before time was measured, before language was formed, before humanity learned how to name pain. What you did caused silence in places where there is usually constant motion. It caused attention to shift. It caused observation to turn into focus. And when the record of that moment was reviewed, it left even the most seasoned watchers stunned. This is not exaggeration. This is not poetic flourish. This is explanation. You need to understand this before we go any further. Heaven is not moved by noise. It is not impressed by performance. It is not swayed by what is loud, visible, or dramatic. Heaven watches patterns. It observes consistency. It studies what you do when no one is watching, when nothing is guaranteed, when there is no reward in sight. And what you did fit a pattern that is extraordinarily rare. It happened during one of your hardest nights. You know exactly which one. The kind of night where time slows down instead of passing, where your body is exhausted, but your mind refuses to rest, where the silence in the room becomes heavy, almost confrontational, like it's asking you questions you don't want to answer. The kind of night where memories resurface uninvited, where doubts line up one by one, where every failure seems louder than every victory you've ever had. That night, the pressure wasn't just emotional, it was spiritual. It was the kind of pressure designed to make you break alignment, to make you abandon trust, to make you say, enough, I'm done believing, I'm done hoping, I'm done trying to be strong. Everything about that moment was engineered to pull you downward, and you felt it. You felt the loneliness, you felt the exhaustion, you felt the unfairness of carrying more than you ever asked for. You felt the temptation to harden your heart, to shut down, to let bitterness protect you from disappointment. You felt the invitation to curse the process, to question the purpose, to turn away from anything higher than your pain. That is what usually happens. That is what happens to most people. But you didn't follow the script. You didn't explode. You didn't collapse. You didn't turn hostile toward the divine. You didn't demand explanations. You didn't accuse heaven of negligence. You didn't weaponize your pain. Instead, you did something that made no sense to logic. In that moment, when resentment would have been justified, when anger would have been understandable, when silence would have been safer, you chose something else. Maybe it was barely audible. Maybe it was only a thought. Maybe it didn't even form into a full sentence, but it came from the deepest place inside you, not from habit, not from performance, not from religious conditioning. It came from truth. You chose trust. You chose surrender. You chose to soften instead of harden. You chose to acknowledge something higher even when it felt distant. You may have said, help me. You may have said, I trust you. You may have said, thank you, even though nothing had changed yet. And here is the part you couldn't see. The moment that choice formed inside you, not when it was spoken, but when it was decided, something shifted beyond the physical world. Your guardian angel, who had been present through every test, every delay, every silent battle, stopped, not metaphorically,
literally, because what was just demonstrated did not match standard human response under that level of pressure. There is a framework angels understand very well. Humans respond to circumstance. Pressure produces collapse. Delay produces doubt. Pain produces withdrawal. This is not judgment. It is observation. It is the normal operating pattern of the human experience. But what you did not fit the pattern. You demonstrated faith without reinforcement, trust without evidence, gratitude without relief, alignment without assurance. And that combination triggered something that almost never activates. Your guardian angel did not celebrate. He did not intervene. He did not speak to you. Instead, he documented, and the documentation bypassed normal channels. It did not go to a lower council. It did not go through standard review. It was flagged for immediate escalation, because there is a classification that only applies when a soul demonstrates transcendent faith under extreme internal pressure. This classification is rare enough that many angels go entire assignments without witnessing it once. When that record reached the archangelic level, it interrupted activity that does not get interrupted lightly. Michael, commander, strategist, defender, was not reviewing individual lives. He was engaged in matters of scale, balance, and containment. Individual stories do not cross his awareness unless they affect something larger, but yours did. He opened your record, and this is where perspective changes everything. You see your life as moments, as chapters that feel disconnected, as good seasons and bad seasons that don't always make sense together. You see setbacks, you see delays, you see repetition. You see effort that didn't seem to pay off when it should have. Angels don't see that. They see continuity. They see patterns of response. They see tendencies. They see how a soul reacts when pressure increases, not just once, but consistently. They see whether light dims or intensifies over time. And when Michael reviewed your pattern, not just that night, but the years leading to it, something became unmistakably clear. Your light did not weaken under pressure. It sharpened. The greater the weight, the more intentional your choices became. The deeper the challenge, the more refined your responses grew. You didn't become louder. You didn't become harder. You became clearer. That is not common. Most souls rise when conditions are favorable and retreat when conditions turn hostile. Your pattern showed the opposite. As resistance increased, your integrity deepened. As disappointment accumulated, your alignment strengthened. As isolation intensified, your connection became quieter, but more stable. This is not emotional resilience. This is frequency stability, and that is what made everything stop. Michael was not looking at a moment. He was looking at a trajectory, and that trajectory revealed something ancient operating inside you. Something that did not originate in this lifetime. Something that recognized truth without needing proof. He traced the pattern backward, not to one dramatic event, but to hundreds of small, forgettable decisions. Moments where you chose kindness when indifference would have cost less. Moments where you chose honesty when silence would have protected you. Moments where you chose restraint when reaction would have felt justified. None of those moments felt important when they happened. But together, they told a story of a soul that does not borrow its light from circumstance. A soul that remembers something deeper than survival, and that recognition is where this begins to change everything. When Michael finished reviewing the pattern, he did not speak immediately. That detail matters more than you realize. Archangels do not hesitate out of confusion. They pause when they are witnessing something that requires recalibration, something that does not fit the existing frameworks. Something that forces a higher level of attention. What he was seeing in you was not raw potential. It was not untapped ability. It was not a promise of what could be someday if conditions improved. It was evidence, proof, demonstration. You had already been doing the work, not consciously, not ceremonially, but consistently. And consistency under pressure is the rarest signal a soul can emit.
Here is what you need to understand about the moment that followed. Heaven does not react emotionally the way humans do. There is no surprise in the sense of shock. There is recognition, alignment, confirmation. When something matches an ancient design, it is acknowledged with precision. Michael recognized that what you were carrying was not something you picked up along the way. It was something you arrived with, something that had been dormant, not inactive, but waiting for the exact conditions that would require it to emerge without distortion. That night was not meant to break you. It was meant to activate you. The pressure you felt was not punishment, it was compression. And compression reveals what is truly inside. When pressure is applied to something hollow, it collapses. When pressure is applied to something solid, it becomes stronger. What emerged from you under that pressure told heaven exactly what it needed to know. You were not reacting, you were responding. And there is a difference that the spiritual realm understands very clearly. Reaction is unconscious. Response is chosen. Reaction comes from conditioning. Response comes from identity. When you chose trust in that moment, you were not making a decision based on hope that things would get better. You were acting from a place that already knew something was held, even if you couldn't explain how or when. That is remembrance, and that is why your record did not stay at the archangelic level. It was elevated again. This is the part most people never hear about because it rarely happens. Individual souls are not typically brought before higher councils unless their trajectory affects more than just themselves. Your case was not reviewed because you are more important than others. It was reviewed because what you demonstrated under pressure has implications. Implications for what is possible. Implications for what has been underestimated. Implications for what humanity can carry while still in physical form. When your pattern was presented, it wasn't your pain that was emphasized, it was your posture. It wasn't what happened to you, it was how you remained yourself while it was happening. That distinction changed the entire conversation. There is something called baseline frequency. It is the energetic state a soul returns to when external influence is removed. Most humans have a baseline that fluctuates based on environment, validation, safety, or control. When those are removed, the baseline drops. Yours didn't. Your baseline held. That means even when stripped of comfort, reassurance, clarity, and certainty, you did not abandon alignment. You didn't perform spirituality, you embodied it. This is why the statement was made. This one remembers. Not as a compliment, as a diagnosis. Remembrance does not mean memory of facts.
It means recognition of truth without needing explanation. It means acting in accordance with something deeper than logic, deeper than emotion, deeper than conditioning. You did not calculate your response that night. You defaulted to who you are, and that is what separated you. This one remembers. Not intellectually, but cellularly. This is crucial. Intellectual belief can be argued with, it can be shaken, it can be overridden by fear. Cellular knowing cannot. It operates beneath thought, it informs instinct, it guides action before doubt has time to interfere. That is why even when your mind was exhausted, something in you remained steady. That steadiness is not common. It cannot be taught, it can only be revealed. This one carries the frequency we intended. This was not said lightly. It refers to original design, to a state of being that was meant to be standard before fear became dominant, before survival overtook trust, before consciousness fragmented. You were not reverting to something new. You were returning to something original, and you did it under conditions designed to prevent exactly that. This is why attention shifted, because when a soul demonstrates original frequency under modern pressure, it proves that the design was not flawed. It proves that the limitation is not in the system, but in the choices made within it. You chose differently, and because of that, something changed around you. Even if you didn't feel it immediately, your classification was updated. This does not mean a label was placed on you for prestige. It means the way heaven interacts with you shifted. Resources, timing, and protection are assigned based on demonstrated capacity. You crossed a threshold that required different handling. From that moment forward, you were no longer processed under standard resistance models. That is why certain things began to lose their grip on you. You may not have noticed it all at once, but patterns started to break. Triggers that once controlled you began to weaken. Cycles that felt inevitable started to dissolve. It wasn't because you tried harder. It was because something no longer had permission. Opposition functions on authorization. When a soul operates below a certain frequency, resistance is allowed to shape, refine, and pressure. When a soul demonstrates stability beyond that threshold, resistance is limited, not removed entirely, but restricted in scope. That is why the attacks began to fail. Not dramatically, not all at once, but subtly. Ineffectively, attempts that once would have derailed you now felt muted. Situations that should have escalated simply didn't. People who once drained you lost access. This was not coincidence. It was recalibration. Your presence began to carry a different weight, and this is where responsibility enters. Because when a soul carries this frequency, it does not do so only for itself. It becomes a reference point, a signal. Others may not understand why they feel calmer around you, why they feel seen, why they feel steadier in your presence, but they will. Not because you explain anything, because your nervous system has learned how to remain regulated in chaos, because your energy has learned how to stay aligned without control, because your light is not reactive, it is consistent, and consistency teaches without speaking. This is why what comes next matters, because the season you are entering is not about proving anything. It is about embodying what you already are, and that embodiment is about to be tested in a different way, not through collapse, but through expansion. You are being trusted with more visibility, more influence, more responsibility, not to elevate you, but to extend what you carry into spaces that need it. You were not forged for isolation. You were refined for impact, and the next phase will make that undeniable. As the recalibration settled, there was no announcement made to you, no sign in the sky, no sudden voice explaining what had shifted. That is intentional. Souls at your level are not guided by spectacle. They are guided by subtle alignment. What changed did not need to be seen to be effective. It needed to be integrated. From that point forward, heaven began watching you differently, not to correct you, not to test you unnecessarily, but to observe how you would move now that the weight had changed. Because here is a truth few ever realize. When resistance lessens, when pressure eases, when things begin to open instead of close, that is when identity is truly revealed. Many people remain faithful when suffering, because suffering leaves them no other choice. But when relief appears, when momentum returns, when doors begin to unlock, that is when many lose alignment. You didn't, and that confirmed everything. Your life did not suddenly become perfect. That is not how this works. But something fundamental shifted in how you experienced difficulty. Problems still arose, but they no longer defined you. Delays still happened, but they no longer destabilized you. You were no longer negotiating your worth with circumstances. That is what being marked actually means. It means your identity is no longer up for debate. From that moment, every challenge that entered your life served a different function. It was no longer there to test whether you would break. It was there to observe how you would carry light while moving forward.
And this is where many chosen ones misunderstand what comes next. They expect reward in the form of comfort, but what comes is responsibility. Because once you have proven you can remain aligned under pressure, you are entrusted with environments where alignment is rare. You are placed among people who are still reactive, still fragmented, still operating from fear, not to save them, not to fix them, but to stabilize the field simply by being present. This is why you have felt a quiet pull lately, a sense that you are being positioned, a feeling that conversations are changing, that people are opening up to you unexpectedly, that you are being asked questions you never advertised yourself as having answers to. This is not coincidence. You are being recognized at levels you are not consciously tracking, because frequency announces itself before words ever do. When you walk into a space, something settles. When you speak, even casually, something lands. When you listen, people feel heard beyond the surface. This is not charisma, it is coherence. And coherence is rare. Here is something important to understand about coherence. It cannot be faked. It is the alignment between what you think, what you feel, what you believe, and how you act. Most people live fragmented. They say one thing, feel another, believe something else, and act out of habit or fear. That internal conflict creates noise. You reduced the noise. That night you chose trust. Something inside you aligned permanently, not perfectly, but honestly. And honesty creates coherence. This is why the attacks could no longer attach. Darkness does not attach to light. It attaches to distortion. It feeds on contradiction, on self-betrayal, on unresolved inner conflict. When those dissolve, there is nothing for it to grip. This does not mean you will never face opposition again. It means opposition must now come openly. It can no longer hide in confusion. It can no longer masquerade as your own thoughts. It can no longer whisper lies and expect you to accept them as truth. You have outgrown that level of warfare, which is why what you are facing now feels different, more external, more visible, less personal. You are no longer fighting yourself, and that alone changes everything. This is where accelerated fulfillment begins to show itself, not as instant gratification, but as momentum. Things that once required force now respond to alignment. Effort does not disappear, but struggle lessens. You begin to notice that when you move, something moves with you. Opportunities arise without you chasing them. Connections form without manipulation. Doors open without compromise. This is not favor for the sake of comfort. It is confirmation.
Heaven accelerates what is already stable, and stability is what you demonstrated. That is why timing is shifting in your life. Things you thought would take years are unfolding faster, not because the rules changed, but because you no longer need the same preparation cycles. You already proved character. You already proved consistency. You already proved restraint. So the delays that were meant to refine you are no longer necessary. This is why some people around you are falling away, not because they are bad, not because you are superior, but because resonance has changed. You can only travel so far with those who need you to remain who you were. Growth disrupts comfort. Alignment exposes misalignment, and not everyone is ready to adjust. This is not loss, it is release. And it is making space for what is next, because the next phase is not about survival, it is about service. Not in the sense of sacrifice, but in the sense of contribution. You are being positioned where your presence does something measurable, where your steadiness becomes medicine, where your perspective becomes grounding. This will not always feel dramatic. In fact, it will often feel ordinary. That is how you will know it is real. The most powerful light does not announce itself. It normalizes peace. It makes regulation feel possible. It reminds others of something they forgot without telling them they forgot it. This is what you are stepping into, not a platform, not a title, a function. And that function will expand as you continue to choose alignment without needing validation. As you continue to respond instead of react, as you continue to trust without needing constant reassurance. You are not being rushed, but you are being advanced. And the final stage of this revelation will make clear exactly how this classification shapes what is about to unfold around you next. What happens next is not sudden, but it is decisive. This is where many people misunderstand divine movement. They expect a dramatic shift on the outside before anything changes within. But in your case, the internal shift already happened. The external world is now catching up. From this point forward, your life is being filtered differently. Every opportunity that approaches you is being screened. Every delay is being evaluated. Every connection is being measured for alignment, not convenience. This is what it means when a soul is marked for special observation. It does not mean life becomes easy, it means life becomes precise. Nothing is random anymore. What enters your field now must be able to coexist with the frequency you carry. Anything that cannot will naturally fall away, often without conflict, without drama, without explanation. You will simply notice that certain doors no longer tempt you, certain paths no longer call to you, certain versions of yourself no longer feel available.
This is not loss of desire. It is clarity. You are no longer negotiating with who you are becoming. This is why the attacks reversed instead of intensified. Once your classification was updated, opposition could no longer approach you indirectly. It lost subtle access. The strategies that relied on confusion, self-doubt, exhaustion, and emotional erosion stopped working, not because you became untouchable, but because you became coherent. Coherence is protection, and this protection does not isolate you, it stabilizes you. Which is why something important has already begun to happen. Your presence is affecting outcomes. You may not even be aware of it. Conversations resolve differently when you are involved. Tension lowers. Decisions slow down enough to become intentional. People reconsider things around you without knowing why. This is not influence in the traditional sense. This is regulation, and regulation spreads. This is why you are being trusted with more, not more weight, but more reach, more proximity to situations that matter, more exposure to moments where your steadiness can quietly redirect an outcome. You are not meant to convince, you are meant to anchor. This is the role of a proven warrior of the light, not someone who fights constantly, but someone whose very state of being reduces chaos, someone whose alignment disrupts distortion simply by existing within the same space. That is why you have survived what should have hardened you. That is why bitterness did not take root. That is why cynicism never fully claimed you. You were not spared because you were weak. You were preserved because you were needed intact. And now the phase of preparation is ending. What follows is not rest, but movement with support. You will feel it as momentum that does not drain you, as progress that does not require self-betrayal, as growth that does not demand you abandon your values to achieve results. This is accelerated fulfillment, not a rush, an alignment of timing with readiness. Things that once felt just out of reach will begin to arrive naturally, not all at once, not overwhelmingly, but steadily. Each step will confirm that you are where you are meant to be, and each confirmation will deepen your trust, not inflate your ego. Because this path requires humility, not the kind that diminishes you, but the kind that keeps you open. You will still be tested, but not to see if you will fail, to see if you will remain yourself as responsibility increases, to see if you will carry success with the same grace you carried pain. That is the final refinement, and you are ready for it. This message reached you now because you needed confirmation, not instruction. You were not waiting for permission, you were waiting for acknowledgement. You needed to know that your silent choices mattered, that your private restraint counted, that your unseen integrity was recorded. It was. Not emotionally, not symbolically, documented. Your response to pressure altered your trajectory, and from here forward, you are walking a path that has been recalibrated in your favor, not because you demanded it,
but because you demonstrated capacity for it. If something inside you recognizes this truth, if you feel that quiet knowing, that internal click, that sense of yes, this explains it, then acknowledge it. Write 777 in the comments as confirmation that you are aligned with this frequency and ready to walk forward without shrinking. Subscribe to this channel and activate all notifications because what comes next will reveal how this classification activates specific support around you and what to expect as your next season unfolds. And if you know someone who has been carrying light silently, share this message with them. Some souls don't need motivation, they need recognition. You are not late, you are not behind, you are right on time, and everything ahead has already been adjusted to meet you where you are.